If Caine wasn't an AI, this brother would be going to super hell. I don't even think Charlie could save him. The newest Digital Circus episode felt like one of the biggest bait and switch episodes I've seen in a very long time from any show, as there was so much build up to this climax of the chance for the main characters to escape, supposed secret relationships between previously unknown characters, and massive lore reveals, only for the episode to tell us it was just a prank, bro.
I'm joking! Stop!
But you know what? I wasn't bothered by this execution at all because it still felt very on brand for the Digital Circus. It's a story to show how much these humans trapped in this digital hell are suffering and the different ways they attempt to cope with the fact that they're trapped with, seemingly no way out. So what better way to do that than give the entire collective a sense of false hope that they can actually leave, rather than just one of them like they did with Pomni in the pilot. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, shall we? So this episode starts off by continuing to play with the idea that Caine has supposedly lost all his interest in crafting adventures for the main crew, as pretty much even before the official events of the series, nobody was really messing with Caine's adventures like that except for Jax, kind of. Ragatha played along for the sake of trying to make others happy rather than herself. Gangle was sad the majority of the time because her comedy mask would always, break during or right before said adventures. Zubul was straight up not participating for the first 3 episodes, and Kinger was never, fully there mentally for the most part, because other than the Mildenhall Manor episode, these other adventures were taking place in bright areas. We have seen these characters grow more as people and even overcome a bit of their own personal struggles, i.e. character development. But these guys weren't becoming more mentally at ease because of the adventures themselves, rather bonding together despite how bad the adventures are. This is something Caine is constantly struggling to comprehend due to his existence as an AI. His programming has him concoct all these different activities that just make people feel worse instead of better, yet in his head, the former human characters just don't appreciate what he's doing for them. So he pretty much immediately pieces out and tells everyone to just dick around at the beach outside for this daily adventure. I love the way these beach scenes, highlight the progress everyone's made so far. Both Ragatha and Pomni are a lot more relaxed, hanging out together, all of it feeling natural without Ragatha trying too hard or Pomni being, even a little off-put by her advances. Gangle's over here having a blast smashing the Jax-shaped melon, smiling even while her sad mask is on. Thanks to how close she and Zubul have gotten, she can, be happy authentically on her own, as opposed to requiring a comedy mask to do so. While Zubul has become much more comfortable in their own skin. We learned a while ago the reason Zubul didn't like going on the adventures or being in the circus in general was because they had a serious case of body dysmorphia. No matter how many different pieces they'd use, they were never happy with the assets only Caine allowed for them to have. Whereas now they straight up say how they appreciate not feeling the need to commit to one look all the time could be a good thing.
I've been starting to think that maybe the ability to change is fine. Not needing to commit to one thing all the time.
Side note, but I love how Zach Hadel is just in everything I watch now. I've been keeping up with all the Smiling Friends Season 3 content. He made cameos for random characters in Has Been Hotel Season 2, and now he's a fish in Digital Circus Episode 7. His voice will never get old to me. It's one of the most naturally funny sounding voices I've heard in my entire life. Put him in more things, please. Jax, on the other hand, still not doing too hot. You gotta love how much the tables have turned with this guy. Yeah, he was always a piece of work, but prior to episode 5, he was the character that seemed to have it the most together, while Pomni was the one spiraling pretty hard in early episodes. Now we cut to present day, Pomni's doing great, and so is everyone else. Meanwhile, Jax doesn't even have the energy to fuck with anybody on beach day. So he decides to go back to his room for the time being, as something Pomni takes notice of, as well as the mannequin-looking character hiding behind a rock. Despite Jax completely crashing out on Pomni in episode 6, it's one of those things where she's clearly not ready to give up on trying to connect with him authentically like Zubul, Gangle, or Ragatha are, for instance. She and even Jax, deep down, knows the fun they had in the guns game was genuine fun. But because of Jax's past trauma with losing 2 close friends in both Ribbit and Kaufmo, but mostly Ribbit, he refuses to make those connections again with others to avoid further pain of dealing with the loss of a loved one. So instead, he completely disconnected himself from reality, bullying others to no end, not even seeing them as people anymore, and trying to accept the fact that he's just stuck in this game forever and should treat it as such. Yet the events of episode 6 have stuck with Jax, or he wouldn't be acting like this. Inside his room, we see him laying in bed on the verge of another panic attack whilst looking at a picture of himself, Kaufmo, and Ribbit together, when he begins to hallucinate Ribbit's arms coming out of the walls, leading to one of the best visual treats we've seen in the Digital Circus so far, in my opinion. As Jax was legitimately on the verge of abstracting here, with all the psychedelic imagery being what goes on in the mind of someone who's about to abstract. If you look closely, you can see some of the patterns start to take the shape of Kaufmo and Ribbit's heads. To nitpick a bit here, while the visuals in the scene were incredible, it did feel like it went on for a bit long for my taste. I was expecting this segment to go on for maybe 30 to 45 seconds, and it went on for almost 2 minutes. It's very likely Jax would have abstracted if Pomni hadn't knocked on Jax's door at the end. Her brother had the googly rainbow eyes and everything. At this point, when it comes to the concept of abstraction happening to any of the main cast, I'm not going to try to predict or theorize if it's going to happen anymore. This episode got me off that theory ship straight up. With how much they've been playing with the idea, especially with Jax, if it hasn't happened now, then I'm not sure if it's, ever going to happen with only 2 episodes left. But I guess you could look at it the other way and say this has simply been build up to an inevitable fate later, which, yeah, fair. Again, with how much this episode gave the middle finger to fan theories, I'm not trying to lean super heavy in one camp or the other at the moment. Pomni informs Jax that this mannequin NPC who was, shown sneaking around at the end of episode 5 was never actually an NPC at all, but a former human who claims he's found the way to lead the circus. Further revealing he helped create the circus game, how he and Kinger have some weird past that he refused to go into detail with, and his name is Abel. Look at that, guys. The Caine and Abel theory finally came true. Sort of. As well as talking about how everyone who's trapped in the circus is in some kind of pod that was developed by this CNA company, the same one that's been teased throughout pictures and fake areas since the pilot. The significance of this place, Abel's entire existence, and Kinger's mysterious past have all been major topics of discussion amongst viewers of the show, since the beginning. Like how Kinger was one of the other creators of the Digital Circus, or people taking the Caine and Abel angle more literally with the role of Caine rather than it being a simple reference to the story itself. It's crazy how well the episode made me believe these lives in, real time at points with the tones and voice acting of these characters. Especially Abel, brother, he played it convincingly. Taking out a locket with a picture inside mentioning how he had to keep some promise or his constant goalpost shifting whenever Kinger was brought up in conversation. In hindsight, my first clue this was all a ruse was when Kinger didn't even know who Abel was when Zubul and Gangle brought him up while Kinger was still inside his fort, as those two felt bad for leaving him in the dark, meaning his mind was in a stable state still. While Ragatha, Pomni, and Abel were going into an out-of-bounds area to get hand cards to access Caine's office, Jax was tasked with distracting Caine with a fake dinner, faking being interested in what Caine has to talk about so he could retrieve the main disc to the game's internal console. At first, I felt genuinely bad for Caine here because I thought this was going to lead to him getting screwed over and betrayed, as again, because he's an AI and the power dynamic between he and the rest due to his ringmaster role, Caine cannot connect with these guys the same way they can connect with each other, so even when Caine thinks he's starting to feel appreciation for Jax taking a quote-unquote interest in him, Caine blue screens 2 different times as he's virtually incapable of feeling true human emotions. But it's thanks to these blue screens, Jax is able to steal the main key without Caine noticing. With everything situated, the crew can now make their way through Caine's office, where we see a bunch of different crystal balls containing worlds for the previous adventures the characters have been on, the Candy Kingdom being one that's highlighted, while another one was a winter-themed one that Jax depressingly stared into. Based on the context clues throughout the episode, I imagine the end of that winter adventure is when he, Ribbon, and Kaufmo took that picture. They were all holding cups of hot cocoa too, which is, typically associated with the holiday time of year. He starts to lose his shit even more as they begin to walk down the hallway towards the main console room, giving off the vibe that Jax had gotten so used to this digital world that another fear of his began to creep up. One where he's even more scared of going back to reality than staying in the digital world. He seemed okayish for a bit, but the moment Gangle and Zubul started talking about how they'll still be friends once they're back to their normal lives, he just couldn't handle it. But even by the time they reached the room, they didn't press the blue button that would supposedly send them home immediately. Pomni had been extremely aware of Abel's, distaste for Kinger specifically before this, so she wanted him to be the one to press the button to send them home. Sure, Kinger's mental state had been sketchy before, but after the Mildenhall Manor episode, Pomni did begin to truly trust Kinger as a person. So for Abel to suddenly show up now of all times claiming to know the way out while simultaneously shading Kinger with no explanation, it's understandable why she'd be a bit sketched out. Also fair for the others to challenge her in this moment because doing this now when they're supposedly so close to leaving feels weird too. These people just want to finally get back to their normal human lives and now Pomni is giving off last minute energy that she doesn't want to do it. All this arguing gets Jax riled up again, hyperventilating while it's realistic images of roads and neighborhoods flash on screen, showing how petrified he is to go back to the way things were. I love when cartoons do that, by the way. Adding in real world imagery or video with the purpose of, horror / to make the viewer feel more uneasy. A borderline perfect use of it here in my opinion. I don't know if there's any Fire Force viewers or readers out there, but when they were using realistic imagery to depict that world's past, it was some of my favorite content from the entire series. So, like the selfish jerk he's always been, Jax presses the red button that forces everyone to stay in the circus. But lo and behold, this entire escape plan was an adventure that Caine was in on the whole time. Not even Abel was real. What's crazy is, this was something Caine had been planting the seeds for since episode 3, apparently, as there was a flashback of Abel watching Pomni hold her breath. These guys were getting more and more fed up with the hand-picked adventures by Caine, that he led them to believe there was actually a way out of the circus for real, so they'd have to, be engaged with the contents of the adventure itself more compared to previous instances. Even the picture in Abel's locket was just a hot dog. That was the biggest betrayal for me, 100%. A quick shout out to Michael Kovac for the incredible performance during the scene where Jax laughed like a maniac after this reveal. Real Joker energy right there, it was great. We're now at a point where everyone has completely turned on Caine, and rightfully so. This was without a doubt the most fucked up thing he's done so far. He's getting nervous about it, but at his core, still doesn't realize how fucked up this whole plot was, not apologizing for what he did and trying to justify it by saying he's just trying to have fun like always. At this point, it feels like everyone else is gonna crash out before he does.
Scratch. The first abstraction.
Also, this line from Kinger could have meant a billion different things at this point with how, this episode was handled. Scratch, if you didn't know, is another name for the literal devil. Is Kinger referring to Caine as Scratch? It's someone else? Or maybe episode 8 will get more into that? We'll see. I like this episode a lot, but I could see some people not vibing with it, I guess. Specifically the lore/theory lovers with how much this toyed with the concept. I think it's fine to, have theories about the show, but we also need to understand the lore stuff has never been what the digital circus is all about. It's a character-focused show exploring the relationships between these characters, with the wacky world being an added bonus, and not the other way around. And I feel like the people who see it that way could get pissed about how this episode did the bait and switch format. But the Abel thing felt insanely rushed anyway, with not enough buildup, so if that did actually end up being true, I think it wouldn't have landed that hard for me anyway. So it being a ruse worked out for the best, in my opinion.
By the way, you think I could get a raise after that performance?
Oh, you're getting too smart. Time to delete.
But I'd love to know what you guys thought of everything. Be sure to let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that good jazz. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.